Hello, and welcome to 20 Lore Pro, a community of Lorcana players who enjoy deck building, competing, and opening Lorcana product. You can find out more at our Discord community, 20lorepro/Discord, link in the description. We have tons of upcoming events, deck lists, and deck discussions. Like in today's video, where we'll be joined by Ft.BDeCandio7, examining his Amber Ruby Mufasa deck list, which has over 1,000 comments in our 20 Lore Pro Discord. We appreciate Ft.BDeCandio giving us a deep dive into his specific deck list and learning more on how to play this popular deck. Hello and welcome to 20 Lore Pro. Today we're doing a deck list discussion with Ft.BDeCandio, looking at his deck list Mufasa. Thank you so much, Ft.BDeCandio, for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your history with trading card games?
Sure. I've been playing since I first got into Pokemon, when I think that game came out, whenever that was, 1998 or something, 1990, I don't know. I played a lot of games over the years. I went from that to a bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! Until the early 2000s, like 2003 or 4 maybe, shortly into the game, but also went into Magic and kind of been playing Magic since then, since about 2002 to current. I actually qualified for the Pro Tour next month, the most recent regional, so that should be fun. Taking a little bit of a break from Lorcana to do that, but I still love it, so be back shortly.
Congratulations on that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how has it been balancing playing Magic, especially at the level that you're playing it at, and stepping into Lorcana?
It's not been too bad. I played games for different reasons a lot of times. Lorcana is quite fun for me to just kind of do, and my local store supports it pretty well. And I get to see a lot of friends who also play it, and I just enjoy it too because I have a daughter. She's 5, so she likes all the characters and all that kind of stuff. So it's a big source of kind of enjoyment and relaxation for me, where Magic's more of a super competitive outlet for me, and it's pretty format dependent for Magic, meaning it's usually an event that comes shortly after a set release. So when I have to take time away from other games to prepare for a certain event, there's really just a short window of time that's taking me away from what I want to be doing, or for just more enjoyment purposes there. So it's not too bad to find a balance.
That's amazing what you said about just Lorcana and your daughter just kind of being like a family game where it's more easygoing. It's not as competitive as like a lot of the other trading card games are right now. That may not always be the case. Maybe there comes a time when Lorcana has competitive play, but just the fact that kids and just a lot of family members are getting into this game, fun to see that.
It definitely has the benefit of having one of the biggest IPs in the world. So yeah, touches a lot of people's lives in different ways, and even my daughter, she likes all the characters. So I think her favorite still might be Elsa. We'll see if she finds something else she likes along the way.
That's great. Well, speaking of your daughter's favorite character being Elsa, what is your favorite Disney character?
Well, it's got to be Stitch. I remember seeing Lilo and Stitch in movie theater. I think for a long time it was like my record holder for amount of times I've watched the same movie in theaters, like 4 or 5 times for whatever reason. I can't remember why I went to see it that many times as a kid.
Great.
But Stitch definitely stood out. He was always kind of goofy off the wall, and it was a good story. And also it translates to a good card in this game, which is kind of nice to be able to play with a character you like so much.
Yeah, Stitch has some really good cards, the Rockstar and the Surfer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. They are 2 of the standouts from set 1, making kind of Amber the character-based, board present kind of card advantage deck that it was. We saw with a bunch of different versions of Amber, paired with, you can still pretty much pair with anything because of that package, the Surfer Stitch, Rockstar, and of course in Amber you have Rapunzel too. But besides that, the Stitches definitely give a lot of velocity to those certain decks to let them kind of stay in the game against some of the bigger cards, the sweepers and things like that. But yeah, definitely my favorite character.
Yeah, it always feels bad with Rockstar Stitch after they've just filled their hand up, and then you have a be prepared, and you're like, well, this is not really a good board state to be prepared.
Right. Right. It lessens the blow of the be prepared for sure.
Well, I'm assuming then that your favorite Disney movie would be Lilo and Stitch?
Actually, Aladdin, oddly enough. The original Aladdin, I really liked Robin Williams' performance in that, and that was something that always kind of stayed with me as a kid. That came out in '94, I think. But no, I mean they're close. I like a lot of Disney movies, but those are my favorite character is Stitch, and favorite movie has got to be Aladdin. Like what I like, can't help it.
Oh, that's great. So a little Disney, just what if question for you. But who do you think would win in a fight between Dragon Maleficent or Dragon Madam Mim?
So it's close. I would have to say Dragon Maleficent, mainly because, and it only because I, not power level wise or anything like that, but I think that Dragon Maleficent's a little bit more cruel to say. I think she's a little bit more ruthless than Dragon Madam Mim, so I think that would give her a leg up in the kind of villain battle that they would have. But
Yeah,
that's my only reasoning for it.
there's almost like a level of lucidity that Madam Mim has with reality.
Yep.
Maleficent seems a little bit more focused, driven on winning.
Yeah, I don't think Maleficent would have bothered to transform into a fox at any point. I think she's just gone straight for the dragon, so.
Well, taking a look at your deck, we see that the name is Mufasa, Mufasa, Mufasa. Where did you get the idea for that name from?
The movie. When the hyenas, I think, in the den just kind of say the name, goes like Mufasa, 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 and he's laughing on it, on the floor there, and it just kind of came to me when thinking of Mufasa in the Lion King there. But yeah, played for Mufasa, so why not? Kind of want to build a deck around it and see where it got me.
It's certainly a memorable scene, and Mufasa in Lorcana being a really unique card to build a deck around. Could you give us a little bit of an overview of the deck, just highlighting the cards and just talking about the broad deck overall?
Yeah, so on top of kind of being built around Mufasa, meaning that you want to have a bunch of characters, not really many, actions or items at all there. I wanted to highlight the interaction between Mother Gothel and Rapunzel, just having a character that comes in damaged, kind of ready to be healed up, and the ability to kind of Rapunzel your way through a bunch of cards in your decks. Because what we've seen a lot of in the most recent set release is actually combat doesn't happen as much as you might think between characters. So Rapunzel's kind of lost a lot of its luster, I would say, just with the ability to pick minions up with the kind of bounce mechanic, and the fact that the Rush Madam Mim Fox lets you kind of just trade two characters and kind of remove damage from ones that are kind of already exhausted and have damage on them. You don't really get to heal very much, so having a character that lets you kind of use Rapunzel to its fullest effect right away was a big part of it. But you also have the, as we talked about earlier with Stitches, you have the big Stitch chains, the Stitch New Dog, Stitch Rockstar, Stitch Surfer, all character based. You want to have cheaper characters for Rockstar. You want to have bigger characters to flip off Mufasa like Surfer Stitch, and Surfer Stitch obviously plays well with having an all character deck. So kind of all fit together there. A couple of the cards are a little bit of filler. Queen of Hearts kind of helps fight the Cinderella 1 cost, the 1/2 that lets you sing for 3, because that can kind of get out of control with being able to sing the 2 damage spells. All the songs that enter Steel now that deal 2 damage or damage based off the number of characters. You just fill out the curve there with some 2 lore questers there. The dock kind of helps bridge the gap there, kind of like a lantern that is actually a character, so you're not messing with your count for Mufasa. And Minnie Mouse, Stylish Surfer, which I think that all the cards that are going to be Surfers are going to be great, because so far they are. The 1/3 evasive, I saw it immediately when the set first came out, and I went 4 of in all the Ruby decks I was playing, because it's just such an efficient character at gaining lore and putting pressure on your opponent to really either race you, which some decks have a hard time doing, especially when they're going second, or kind of steal the game when you're trying to catch back up as a way that they can't really interact with. And kind of going up the curve, you always have the Ruby threats, the Maui, Lady Tremaine, and Maleficent, all characters, all kind of usually eat something of your opponents for free, whether it be on enters play or rushing, as we've seen Maui do forever. So kind of the base of the deck, a little bit of control elements to it with the removal. All characters except for a couple lanterns to kind of help accelerate to keep up with some of the other decks, and Mufasa as a way to kind of go against the Lady Tremaines and Meteor Pairs of the world that we're seeing a lot out of the Ruby Amethyst decks. Kind of helps check those a bit. Yeah, you never know what'll pop up.
Thank you so much for giving us that overview. What would you say is the overall perfect lines or perfect strategy that this deck is trying to accomplish?
So a lot of it would be just kind of powering out. I think even though there's only 3 lanterns, having exactly two is actually often a good thing. If you can go on turn 2 lantern, turn 3 lantern into Minnie Mouse, that's your kind of ideal turn 2, turn 3 play. A lot of decks are playing 1-cost cards like I am in this deck Stitch and the Queen, not because I really want those in my deck, but because I want to be able to shift into them. So they actually aren't often played out on the early turns of the game, unless you have to kind of challenge something immediately. Some of the things you really want to look for are having a lantern, a Minnie Mouse, that helps put pressure down, and Mufasa is always a good cleanup. Depending on what you're playing against, Maleficent's actually a good card to have because you usually want to keep it in your hand, oddly enough, even though it's a giant dragon, because it's ink that you don't draw if you're playing against a Whole New World deck. They Whole New World you in the middle of the game. You're unlikely able to play a Maleficent, so might as well just have it inked it early and draw something you can maybe play. But no, you're kind of just looking for a good mix of things. Obviously, having Mother Gothel and Rapunzel, lines where you can get that out, in the same turn, whether it be involving 2 lanterns, a dock and a lantern, 2 docks. Get that out in turn 4, just that combo of refilling your hand, playing a 3/4 and a 1/5. All good things, but you're really putting pressure where you can. Minnie Mouse is a big part of it. Mufasa helps kind of stabilize against some of the removal people are playing, and the rest of it's all just kind of to interact and keep up on the cards there. So there's no real straightforward game plan. It's more just we'll see how this goes and put as much pressure as I can on you and have a bunch of resilient threats.
I like so much the card Mufasa and just its ability because you never know what you're going to kind of wheel into, and that can be really fun to just watch as a spectator.
Oh, it's like a box of chocolates. You'll never know what you're going to get. So,
what have you found that this deck has been really good against? Like, which deck do you feel when it sits across the table, you're like, yes, so glad I'm seeing this right here?
That's difficult to say because I don't know that a lot of the decks in Lorcana have kind of matchups where they absolutely kind of crush them, except for the more extremely linear type decks like the Sapphire Ruby kind of item control deck against like the Ruby Amethyst mid-range bounce deck or anything like that. Those are kind of lopsided matchups there. I'm not really thrilled to play against anything, but I'm not unhappy to play against anything really either. It's kind of just in the middle of the road. It has the game against everything, and yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to play against someone trying to use a bunch of steel removal against me, because I have some high willpower characters, Stitch, Surfer, Mufasa, which kind of is resilient to that kind of thing. But no, it's a very much a more mid-range deck. It wants to play in the middle of the game. That's really what it wants to do. So it's good against almost everything. It doesn't have terrible matchups against pretty much anything. It just all comes down to what they have and what you have and how well you play it. So it's kind of in the middle of the road deck.
Yeah, I like that. When you look at decks, and especially with how Lorcana is, there's so many, or I should say, there's not a whole lot of cards, only so many decks, but it still has versatility. Right, so far. And you can, going 50-50 or knowing that you have a deck that it has a base that's good against everything, but also can, depending on the piloting, cannot perform very well. That could be a good deck for people to look into and to try. Why would you say that people should try this deck out over any other that's out there?
Probably something fresh. I know people are kind of getting tired in some ways of some of the mainstays with the Amber Steel and the Amethyst Ruby decks there. This is kind of a, takes one of each of those color pairs and kind of smash them together. No, it's just a lot of fun. I mean, I think being able to play a proactive game plan while having some of the nice heavy hitters and removal kind of gives you a good sense of control of the game there. It will take some practice. There are certainly lines you could take with the deck that I would advise against, involving, I think there's an over popular idea of having to play your 1-cost card out on turn 1. I often do not in this deck specifically, just because you want to make sure you can bridge to later parts of the game without being short on ink, and obviously it's matchup dependent there, but I think the biggest part of the deck is getting to flip cards to Mufasa. That's why I like to play it there. I've had games where I was entirely far behind, no cards in hand, and I flipped a Maleficent into something that then got hit, but it didn't fully clear it, and then I drew into a Rapunzel and drew 3 more cards, and it was just a huge swing, and it was a lot of fun to play, and it was definitely Mufasa that facilitated that.
That's great. That sounds like a really fun game.
Certainly was. It was someone who was streaming at the time. I can't remember exactly who was, but they definitely had some words afterwards. It was kind of fun to listen and talk to them afterwards about it. But yeah, it was a great game.
That's awesome. Looking at the deck, I know we had just discussed that this kind of has a good 50-50 matchup, or you don't feel overwhelmed by another deck, but is there one that comes to mind that when you see it across the table, you just think, okay, this is the toughest match I'm going to have?
The only one specific that I feel that way sometimes against when I'm playing certain decks, and I can't exactly tell you why, is just the kind of the green, the Emerald Steel mill decks. Sometimes I'm playing on Pixelborn, and I'm not really paying attention to exactly what's going on. I'm also doing something on a different monitor, and I've just looked up, I've drawn a bunch of cards with my Rapunzel, and then I'm like, oh, they're playing Emerald Steel. I should probably stop drawing cards because they have more cards in deck than me to start. So they're probably trying to mill me out here. So that's something that can be a bit difficult. I mentioned, the steel removal not being great against this deck there, but when you have the ability to Mother's Knows Best, return some characters to my hand, and kind of remove when it goes to the Banished Zone trigger from Mufasa, and then make me discard it with a Whole New World. I'm really far behind, and I can't really kill cards like Genie very well. Actually, it takes a combination of a Minnie Mouse and a Queen to do that, and it's not the easiest thing to set that up all the time. But that's certainly a deck that I don't really enjoy playing against with most decks, but this one for sure.
Yeah, those Emerald Steel decks, the discard. I'm glad that it's kind of become more popular and that's a deck that has seen more play. But it is a tough matchup, and it's one that you have to really be careful with.
I can never get them to work, but definitely my opponents can, and I'll be looking for an interview you do with someone who likes to play in that deck a bunch. So,
well, we do have one coming up, so be looking for that in the future. What would you say is the best line in the deck? The one that you're like, this is the sweet spot. I set up my hand perfectly. This is what I want to see.
So if I could kind of script an opening game plan, especially if I'm going first and I don't really have to worry about them getting too far ahead with like a card like Pinocchio or anything like that, it's got to be Lantern Minnie Mouse into Gothel Rapunzel. You go from 2 to 3, but then you have 2 lanterns to play to go to 6 ink, essentially use to go Gothel and Rapunzel in the same turn. So that opening is really, really hard for a lot to come back with, because not only have you put pressure on them with the Minnie Mouse, you've accelerated the ability to play higher cost ink cards up to 6 and refilled your hand, and put some board presence in play with Mother Gothel. 3/4 is nothing to scoff at these days, but that's the kind of opening sequence, the cards you look for. You don't really look for lanterns. You're not like mulliganing good cards to find lanterns, because you're only playing 3, and it's intentional to make sure that you don't flip them to Mufasa, and they do have diminishing returns at some point. But it's always nice to have 1, and 2 is sometimes a treat.
That's awesome. I think that sounds like a really strong line, being able to fill up your hand, get some good characters out there that are hard to get rid of with their bigger bodies, and then play your bigger things followed up by that. Now, looking at the deck overall, I know we talked about how some of the 1-drops are really just kind of in there to shift into, and you want to play characters, and so there's Doc, and because it's another character that feeds into Surfer Stitch. But what would you say are kind of some of the flex cards that people could look to play less of or take out altogether for something else that they're trying to test out?
Sure. So there are a couple cards there. I think actually that the Queen package, the 1-cost 2/2 Queen and the 5-cost Queen, are not necessary. They're good. They definitely help combat certain situations. And Queen of Hearts, the 2-cost Ruby character, kind of pairs nicely with the bigger Queen, letting you kind of rush with the +4 -4 bonus therein. Also Simba. They're not cards that are kind of quintessential to the strategy itself. They're kind of filler for helping combat some of the earlier decks there. But even at this point, I think a lot of the 1-cost 2/2s are just getting outclassed, and people are playing cards like Teeth Inhibitions, and Mim is everywhere, so the 3/3 stat line is pretty hard to kind of justify playing a bunch of 2/2s in your deck. So those are all cards, Simba 2/3s again against a 3/3 or 4/3 is not that great. So those cards, I'm not certain what you replace them with. I'd be looking to something in set 3 that might fill that role a bit better there. They're fine, but they're not necessary. I do think a lot of the other cards are pretty great. Minnie Mouse, Rapunzel, Mufasa, Maui, Stitch, Tremaine, Maleficent. They're all kind of what you want to be doing. They're all bigger threats that are all inkable. Tremaine's not, but Tremaine gets a pass because it helps deal with some of the cards you can't otherwise deal with. Just some of the smaller things kind of replaceable, and if your metagame is less aggressive, maybe you could try something else. What that else is, I'm not certain exactly. This is kind of where I've been at for a bit with the deck, but I'd be looking mostly to set 3 to try to fill some of those roles there, but feel free to kind of swap some stuff out. Just make sure it's A, inkable, and B, something that makes it so you don't lose the game if they start with something super aggressive.
In a lot of cases, I think that more character-based flex cards would be good to bring in or bring out. especially with trying to have the Surfer Stitch to refill and targets for Bunzel.
Right, exactly. Characters are kind of at a premium. I certainly could go up on the non-character count. You know, I'm playing 57 characters and 3 lanterns. I'm a bit extreme in that sense because I like my Mufasa to always do what it does. You could still probably get away with a couple more actions or items and be fine most of the time. It'll sting when it it isn't it'll be an item that you don't want to flip into when you need to hit something, but you certainly could and probably get a similar result based off of that change. So.
Now, with the 3 lanterns, have you ever had an instance where you've got Mufasa on board, it gets it banished, and then you flip a lantern?
Oh, so I was playing against a Amethyst Ruby deck, and I was at 19 lore. I had 2 lanterns out, and my Mufasa died, and I flipped the 3rd lantern when I needed any character in play.
Oh, no.
Because I have to be prepared. So that's definitely happened. I mean, I guess I also could have missed by hitting Maui because it has, it's a rush character with no lore. But no, I definitely did that, and I was kind of a bit sad. I was like, man, there's 42 cards left in my deck, and all of them except for the one other lantern was live there, and it happens.
That's something that has happened less often with set 2, but especially during set 1, I would watch Amber Steel players cast Aerial and just to hit no songs in the top 4, and they just get sad.
I mean, to be honest, they weren't that favored. They were like, maybe 60% to hit on any given turn, and that's not great. I don't want to play for a bunch of 60%ers, but no, it's gone down with the set 2, just a bunch more songs people play, and a bunch more viable ones, I'm sure we'll see going forward too.
Yeah, that's with set 2, I think we've seen a good increase of songs, but also quality songs as compared to set 1. But it could always feel bad, like you're saying, with the Mufasa to flip into something like a lantern, but thankfully the 3 makes it where that doesn't happen too often, I'm sure.
Hakuna Matata means no worries.
How well has the deck performed at your LGS, and have you seen it make any big accomplishments or remarkable finishes in organized competitive events?
Kind of looking at my stats on Pixelborn, I think I'm currently, I can take a look here, I think 44 and 16, so a little bit above 70% win percentage, which is okay. Some decks I have higher, some decks I have lower, but I'm sure once we get some kind of information for organized play and we have kind of a large conglomerate of deck results from similar level competitive events, we'll get a much better idea of what decks are really good. Is it all just kind of hype? Is it just because that's all people are playing? There's a lot to come, I'm sure, in lorcana with some OP announcements down the line. But for right now, I kind of see what I see, and I think it's a lot of what people think is just straight good and don't want to either take the time to learn or don't feel as confident in it, or maybe just don't like it as much. But if I were playing in an event this week, which I've played a couple times locally, I've played this deck I think once locally. Did pretty well. I think I lost to Ruby the Amethyst once and beat it 2 other times, but there's a bunch of that floating around there. But no, it's a lot of fun, and games where you always are in the game and you win some and you lose some, I think are some of the best decks, just to have that experience of winning with something that may be under the radar or that you built yourself, and that's just a treat.
Especially coming from Magic, I think of Aetherworks Marvel, where you pay energy and you're trying to flip the top and hope for something. I think just the gambling aspect, the what's gonna come, I enjoy that.
It's funny you point that out. I think my best performance at Pro Tour is with playing Marvel. So
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I'm always in for unique experiences. I play a lot of games. I play a lot of different games for that, just to if I want to feel a certain something, I know which game I can kind of go to, or if I want to play a certain deck in a certain game because I want to feel something. And that's really what it's about. It's the experience that you take away from a game, and how much you get from it, less so than your results, less so than anything like that.
Well, if you have time, would you mind showing us kind of a walkthrough of gameplay and maybe some of the best hands that you're looking to keep?
Sure. Just a minute here.
Thank you so much, Ft.BDeCandio, for allowing us to watch some gameplay. We're looking forward to it. And again, we're here joined with Ft.BDeCandio with his Mufasa deck list.
Yeah, I'm going to fire up a match here. As you can see, I haven't really played too much from the leaderboard size I have here this season. Unfortunately, a bit busy, but now let's give it a go. See how far it takes us. I like one of the updates they did recently. You actually get to see the color pair that you're playing against. So before the game starts, so we're playing against Ruby Amethyst I'm guessing, you know, it's a pretty standard Ruby Amethyst deck list here. We're gonna have this hand here. There's not too much I really like from it. Minnie Mouse is the only card that really stands out, and I think I want to keep some things to ink. I'm probably gonna get rid of the stitches here because I don't have anything to shift on. There's a chance I might want to keep this, but I think this is what I'm gonna go with, and I'm not keeping these to really play out really early because this queen isn't actually very good against this deck. It's more just to have some guaranteed ink and cards I don't really want to draw later. Actually gonna keep this for that reason too. It's less about finding cards and more about making sure I don't draw things I don't want to. So let's ink this, and again, since I don't really have a game plan to really get aggressive with this card against this type of deck, I'm not even gonna play one of these out. I'm just gonna use it for ink and then kind of move on from there. See, they would have had a 3/3 if they wanted it. All right, Maui down. All right, ink this here. Sometimes I like to play this on turn 2, especially when they don't play a 1/3, so that they can't Teeth Inhibitions this. This is something that kind of gets a pass with what I was saying about the early characters when they don't have a 1/3 in play because they can't Teeth Inhibitions it, as opposed to, you know, something like this, which this will trade for any of the Mims, where this will not. And there's the Teeth, so they don't have a 1/3 to pair with their Teeth. Lantern's a turn off here, but I think I'm still going to play Lantern here. So let's quest. I'm gonna ink this here. Still want the Minnie Mouse for later, but I want to develop this Lantern and play a 5 cost next turn. Again, I'm not gonna play my queen out. Don't need the ink, or don't need the character in play. I could use the ink. Keep these in play. If I felt like I needed to be aggressive, I would have inked a Maui and played a queen here, so that I can go ink something, shift the bigger queen on, and then play Minnie Mouse out with 5 ink, but I don't feel like that's where we're at this game. I think they're gonna just play a Minnie Mouse of their own. That's fine. Ooh, Stitch is nice. Stitch is gonna help me set up this queen to actually draw a card. That's why I got rid of the bigger queen instead of the lower one last turn, so that if I drew a Stitch, I would have something to draw off of. So I think you're the Maui here. Not really many targets in this matchup to hit. I'm fine trading here, so that's why I'm gonna be able to quest. And if they play a Mim, then it trades. Teeth Inhibitions though is a little bit obnoxious, but not too bad. Seeing as they would have to not quest for 2, and we're at a later stage of the game now. There's a Mim there, which we were fine trading into if they wanted. It looks like they're not even gonna do that. So, of course, at this point in the game, we're going to probably play out our Stitch next turn. There's the second Teeth, which they had. That's fine. Can't really get around that too much. And develop the Stitch for the queen. Alright. Fine questing into this. Because if it dies, I get something off the top. And now I'm setting up my Stitch for next turn, and I have a Mouse for next turn too. I like where we're at. We might be a little bit behind on cards because I have 2 Merlins now. But unless they're planning on double trading into my Mufasa, which I would be kind of okay with as long as I hit something, we're pretty far ahead here. And we do kind of have to worry about a Maui next turn, which the Stitch might stay upright, but we'll see. Okay. Depends on what we draw, of course. Okay, that's interesting. So you always want to draw first whenever you have a kind of line of play. I would rather have more information on the queen draw from Stitch than the Gothel, because the Gothel, if I draw Rapunzel, I wouldn't want that. It's close. I think I started on the cheaper option. Okay, well, glad I started on the cheaper option. Let's just keep deploying things because we're drawing cards off of them now. Alright, Maui, okay. I'm going to play out this here. We're not at the Be Prepared turn yet. I think at this point of the game, I'm going to ink this to maybe get to this Maleficent, and I'm just going to quest. I think that a Maui is not the worst thing that could happen here, and I don't want to just lose out on all the lore I'm going to get here, because questing with this kind of protects some of these characters from getting hit, unless they do have a Maui. Then it kind of This is not as good for me, but what can you do? We would still have a Minnie Mouse named Mufasa for if we draw a Stitch. Surfer Stitch, I should say. But any of our cheaper characters are alive. Right, they're trading here, so that tells me, based off of that as their first action, they don't have a way to, they don't have a Maui right here. I think it's kind of funny that you can tell where they play cards from, so if they played from right here, they drew into it. Alright, yep. They could have a Lady Tremaine, which I would probably sacrifice the Mufasa. Pretty sure. Sometimes it's worth keeping Mufasa in play and not letting people trade into it so that they can't try and clear it, flip into it, and then be prepared you. But alright, the Tremaine's going to kind of show us why we like the Mufasa. And I'll probably sacrifice this here. Just to get something going. And Doc. Doc works. One more ink and we can Maleficent, but I don't know if I want to Maleficent into their turn 7 like this when they probably have to be prepared anyway. Perfect. That was great, actually. So I'm just going to quest out because I'm probably getting be prepared next turn. And we have another Mufasa here. It's going to keep the train going. The only thing that could have been better that turn would be, 2 stitches into a Mufasa. 2 1-cost stitches. Nice way to kind of show the power of Mufasa in this game. It checking a Tremaine and also flipping a card off Be Prepared. Ah, you should have been on top before then. Not out of it yet. They do have 5 cards to our not so much. See, the 1 draws into 1 draw. That would have been better. I'm probably gonna have to play out a character here just to kind of threaten some lore. And Stitch being in play means that a rock straw off the top actually wins me the game. So they kind of be a little scared of the Stitch, but still have to be a little scared. But we're still 2 away from this for right now. Alrighty. Not really much I can do, I don't think, other than play into and Be Prepared and hope that they don't have it. But you're kind of in that situation where you kind of cross your fingers. If that Mufasa flip had been something that, quested for 2, or if it had been another Mufasa even, or if I'd drawn these 2 before drawing the Mufasa, I could have had a bunch of other characters in play. But looks like they're gonna trade in first and then maybe Elsa me, or is this a dragon? There's a dragon. All right, still tight, still close game. We can draw a queen off the top. Another Stitch. Okay. So I can quest here. So I have 2 options. I can quest here, play Stitch out, and then, kind of let that be. I can not quest 2, and I think I'm leaning towards not questing because if I quest and they have a Tremaine, that's a full clear, and I can't then draw a new dog. I'm a queen down and a Stitch server down already, so I think I'm just going to play this and pass it. Either of those is an out, and they have to make the choice on which one they want to kill, and this is going to eat anyway, so hope I don't get Elsa. That's really what this is. It's a close matchup. It's definitely tough. That Ursula, 1 lore difference would have made the whole difference there. Or if I'd flipped off Mufasa something quested for 2 instead of 1, would have been the game already. Tight margins and all right, another Maleficent off the top. All right, that's we're getting to the nitty gritty of. It feels like set 1. They're going Ursula, Maleficent now. Oof. All right, I think we are dead here. That was close. Yeah, if it wasn't another way to just kind of kill one of my things immediately, maybe I should have quested the turn prior so they had to trade in. But I wanted to give myself 6 outs there instead of just the 3. But very close. But as you can kind of see the resiliency the deck has to a lot of the removal that people play now.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us kind of a playthrough of the deck, and even against one of the most prevalent decks, Ruby Amethyst, I think it was performing really well. Like you said, the difference with Mufasa or any of those other draws even have been a different Stitch or a different Queen. Really could have tilted the game in a different direction.
Yeah, we were one lore off there at the end of the Mufasa, and he flipped to one lore quester instead of two. But no, it happens. I mean, as you can see, there's a lot of play to it, and you kind of saw at the end why I don't like the Stitches and Queens as much. Sometimes, they're just kind of air in the later in the game, and they could be replaced with something else. I like them for what they can do. They also are threatening, to win the game if I ever could shift into them. You could play cards, like Hades, that returns characters from the Banner Stone to your hand to kind of grind a bit more if you felt so inclined, but there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about the deck you could try.
Before you leave today, Ft.BDeCandio, is there anything that you'd like to say to the 20 Lore Pro community?
Just keep on brewing. I mean, I see a lot of decks in there that people want to try out and improve, and always reach out for assistance. So keep doing that. I don't chime in as often as I could. Sometimes I do here and there. I like what I like sometimes, but no, I see a lot of good back and forth conversation there. No one really kind of hating on anyone's decks like that. So it's a lot of fun to watch the kind of hive mind of deck brewing going on.
As kind of the season winds down and you're able to play more after, of course, your Magic Pro Tour event, where can people find and watch you in the future?
Yeah, so I do pretty much the same tag for everything, Ft.BDeCandio7, whether it be on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, or on Discord. I don't know how that all works there, but yeah, same handle there at Ft.BDeCandio7. I did a bit more YouTube when the game first counts at one, and I've kind of had to take a quick pause there for now, but I will be doing stuff, especially when Set 3 comes out, at those places. So yeah, definitely where you can find me.
Well, thank you so much, Ft.BDeCandio. We're really looking forward to seeing you in the future, and we're all wishing you luck with the Magic Pro Tour tournament that you have coming up.
Thank you. Yeah, crossing my fingers it goes well. Kind of used the last regional as my swan song event just because I was qualified, but hey, I qualified for the PTO of it, so we'll see how this Pro Tour goes. So
that's great. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you again in the future.